Hey folks, Dennis here with Las Vegas Worm Farm and the Living Soul community. And it's a nice day out today, so decided to take out the old electric scooter and ride it to the property so I can go water the worms. Figured might as well take you guys along for a ride and talk about a few things while trying not to get hit by a car. So hopefully y'all are having a good weekend. It is Easter Sunday today, so hopefully y'all had a good Easter. But let's go ahead and let's talk about some stuff. So I think one thing I'd like to talk about is on the lines of like microbial diversity. And specifically, I'll just talk about diversity in general, right? So we have microbial diversity, but also just diversity in general. And the other day I was talking to somebody and they were talking about, hey, like what can I add into my soil to, make it better, do this, that, and the other. And I always like to tell people this, and that is when you're adding things into the soil, it's kind of like Thanksgiving. Like, nobody wants to show up to Thanksgiving with only ham and mashed potatoes and green beans at the table. I mean, it's better than nothing, right? But you would prefer to show up with ham, turkey, chicken, and whatever other meats that you want to have there. Brisket, jambalaya, catfish. Yeah, I know I'm naming some random stuff, but like the more stuff you have at Thanksgiving, the better Thanksgiving's going to be because you have a lot more to choose from. Especially in our house, if you think about it. I'm not a big ham fan, not cooked ham. I like sliced ham, but like cooked ham, I'm not a big fan of. But like the rest of the family is, I'd rather have turkey. And my wife, she's not really a big turkey fan, so we got to have both. Or I'll make a Cornish hen. Why do we do that? It's because different folks like different things. And in my case, or in this case, when we're talking about diversity and things, adding things into the soil, the more things you can add into the soil, the better it is. There's a kicker though, right? There's always a catch. No matter what, there's always a catch, right? And people always say, if it's too good to be true, then, it's not true. There's always a catch. In this case, there is a catch. And I'll tell you back to the Thanksgiving thing. What if I told you that, people brought stuff to Thanksgiving, but they brought like a lot of it, So instead of, just bringing a side dish of, let's call it sweet potatoes, they bring 50 gallons of sweet potatoes or 50 gallons of macaroni and cheese or 50 gallons of red beans and rice. It's a bit excessive, don't you think? Nobody's going to eat all that. We already have leftovers at Thanksgiving. So why would you bring so much food to this? It's unnecessary. The same thing goes for your soil. When you're adding a bunch of things in there, it's unnecessary. You don't need to. When people are coming to eat for Thanksgiving, they're eating a little bit, right? They're eating a little bit of this, a little bit of that. They want to taste everything. They're like, I want to taste the cranberries over here. I want to taste, the green beans. I want to make sure we taste the mac and cheese, the cornbread. I want to taste all of the things, We got a couple of different types of rolls. I know I like the Hawaiian rolls, so I'm going to try those. But these are homemade rolls. We're going to give those a try, too. The soil is no different. You're bringing in diversity. You're bringing in all these things, right? The plant's not eating all of it at once. It wants other things too. So it's going around and using up a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So you don't have to put a lot of one thing, but putting little things or little amounts of many things is great. It's amazing. So when it comes to diversity of adding things into the soil, of course, we want to feed the right microbes, right? And we want to give them the right amount of food so that they can be happy and healthy and provide the things for our soil that our plants need. At the end of the day, that's really what we want to do. And we do talk about, giving the right foods to the right plants. And that's based upon, plant succession. So, and the fungal to bacteria ratio. Diversity is the key when we're talking about feeding the microbes. And You know, I think later on we'll talk about what is it called? A study that agro data, I believe that's what they're called. They did on different types of things and the different supplements that they were adding to the soil and what that actually did to the microbial life during their tests. The thing is, if you feed too much of one thing, you're going to feed one specific type of microorganism, right? What we want to do is we want to feed everybody and we want to keep everybody happy, right? Like just like Thanksgiving, I want to make everybody happy at the table. I just don't want to make myself happy or my wife happy. I want to make sure there's a little bit of everything so everybody's happy. And the same thing goes for your soil system. When we're feeding amendments and stuff like that, we want to feed a little bit so that everybody gets a little bit, right? Or a little bit of a lot of things so that everybody has a little bit to eat from. My brother-in-law, he used to cook a lot of stuff, and he's from Louisiana. So when we showed up for Thanksgiving, we had brisket, you know, we had jambalaya, we had crab legs. I mean, you name it. We had all types of stuff. And I was like, who's eating all this? Well, sure enough, somebody was eating it, right? Maybe it wasn't me, or it wasn't my wife, or it wasn't the kids, but somebody came by and ate it. And that's what we want to do for our soil. I just got to make sure I don't get hit by no cars. That's what we want to do for our soil. We want to make sure that we're adding in a bunch of different things so that everybody gets a little bit and is happy. Soil's really no different than a good Thanksgiving meal. If everybody's happy, then everybody gets a little bit, you know, and everybody's satisfied. So you got to make sure you have something for everybody. When we're talking about amendments, earlier I think I mentioned, you know, kelp. A lot of people like to add sea kelp. That's good. It's good. You can add it. Just don't add too much. Some people like to add, you know, molasses. It's not my thing. I would never tell you to add molasses. Usually not. In rare instances, I might tell you to add that, but usually no, right? But if you're going to add it, add a little, not a lot. What else do we add to our soil? Bone meal, blood meal, feather meal, corn meal, whatever type of meals that you have. All of these are organic things, but you don't need a lot. You just need a little bit. So don't overdo it. We want to make sure that we have a little bit so everybody can get some, not a lot of one thing. Now, yes, this is going to cost a lot of money. If you're going to buy all these different meals, right? You're adding in fish meal, bone meal, blood meal, you're adding in feather meal, you're adding in corn meal, you're adding in oatmeal, you're adding in, I don't know, what other kind of meals we have. Insect frass, we're adding in, you know, all of these different things, fish hydrolysate, fish emulsion, whatever it is, you're adding all this, just add it in small quantities. We don't need a lot. Just a little bit. A little bit goes a long way. Plus, it becomes expensive. You're adding all this stuff. But is it necessary? At the end of the day, do you have to add all these things into the soil? Absolutely not. So Professor Sparks and Gabe Brown went around testing different types of soil to see the type of the amount of nutrients that were in the soils, and the average soil from around the world had plenty of enough nutrients in it to sustain plant life, right? Now, whether it's soluble or not, that's a different story, but the availability of it in the soil was there. I think the example, or the average soil had around 2,000, I think it was grams, micrograms, let's call it micrograms, let's go with micrograms, of nitrogen available in the soil. Now, it might not be plant available, but it was there. 2,000 grams, that's a lot. That's a lot. Your plants would be plenty happy. And the fastest growing plant, or one of the fastest growing plants, would be like a duckweed. And I believe a duckweed uses, it's either 3/10 or 3/100 of a gram of nitrogen every single day. That's nothing. Now, if you're growing duckweed for 120 days, you're not even at 120, micrograms of nitrogen for that entire growing season, because you have over 2,000 available. So, when it comes down to the amendments, do you really need to add this stuff into the soil? I mean, you can if you want to. I don't think it's necessarily required. But if you do, just remember, a little goes a long way. You don't need a lot. And we want to make sure that we're feeding the right set of microorganisms, right? If you know your soil has a bunch of bacteria in it, do you really want to feed bacterial foods? Probably not. You probably want to stimulate some of the other microorganisms that are in there. So maybe feeding the bacteria is not the way to go. Now, if you've got the other guys and, the other microorganisms and you want to stimulate the bacteria, then sure, maybe. Or, they've got bugs in a jug. What I'm referring to is microorganisms that they put into a liquid form and you use those. If you know for a fact, because you've done testing, that a specific type of microorganism builds a relationship with a specific type of plant, and you don't have that in the soil, by all means, add the microbes into the soil and then feed them the food that they'll need to reproduce and stay alive. In that situation, add a little bit of the food for that specific microorganism that you're adding into the soil. But diversity is the key here. Remember, diversity. There's a lot of tests out there where they're testing different microbes and they find that certain microbes build better relationships with others. But remember, there's millions and trillions and billions of different types of microorganisms in the soil. We only know about 1% or 2% of what's actually in the soil. There's not a lot of studying being done on that topic. So we only know a tiny bit. So if scientists find out that this one microbe, builds a special relationship with a specific type of corn plant, well, we know that benefits it. But there's other microorganisms that will also benefit it. So keep that in mind when you're feeding different types of microorganisms, right? If you're trying to build bacteria, then feed the bacterial foods. If you're trying to build the fungi, then build the fungal foods, based upon the type of plant that you're trying to grow. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. We're adding amendments to the soil, and we do this very strategically, right? I add amendments to the soil. If I do add amendments to the soil, specific amendments, it's because I'm lacking a specific set of microorganisms that I need back into the soil system. And if I'm lacking them, then I want to make sure I bring them back by stimulating them, giving them a little bit of food to eat, and hopefully getting them to multiply and then come back in full force so that they can cycle nutrients and create soluble nutrients create nutrients for my plants, soluble nutrients for my plants. That's when I would use, these different types of organic amendments. Now, another thing to think about is when we're talking about these amendments that we're adding to the soil, right? If we don't have microbes in the soil, you're not going to be cycling any nutrients. What I mean by this is, if your plant's already struggling, right? Or you have a plant that's struggling, or maybe you're just getting plants on the ground, it doesn't matter. If you don't know what's missing in the soil, and you start adding things, it might be just wasteful. It might be. Here's the thing. All these organic amendments, blood meal, bone meal, kelp meal, right? If we're adding it into the soil, and there's nobody there to be able to break that organic material down, it's not doing anything for your plant. It's doing nothing. Zero. It's just sitting there. Microorganisms are actually what unlock insoluble things and turn them into soluble things for your plants to be able to uptake as nutrients. So I guess you could say that microbes are the key to get into the refrigerator for your plants. So if you're adding compost, wood chips, high cellulose, high lignin things, or carbon things to your soil, or maybe even nitrogen sources to your soil, either or, if you don't have the microbes in the soil to begin with, they're not going to be able to break that material down, and it's just going to sit there. One example that I like to use is here in the desert. You guys know I'm in Vegas. It is very arid and dry. I can put all of the amendments that I want into the soil, but if I don't make sure that the microorganisms, if I don't add the microorganisms or ensure that they're there, and I don't give them water, that stuff is just going to dehydrate and basically sit there and do nothing. That's why a lot of people have problems when they're building their compost piles here in Vegas. Because it's so hot and so arid, it sucks the moisture out of it, and all of a sudden you end up with this dried, petrified stuff that never breaks down. There's no microbes. You gotta have the microbes there. You gotta keep the microbes alive first. We're gonna look to see so I don't get hit by a car again. And we're gonna put the blinker on and we're gonna come across. Wow. I think I just lost my hat. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna park our scooter and go back and get my hat. And we're gonna turn off my blinker. Every now and then my hat will fall off. I think I can run and get it before, maybe. There we go. All right, we'll put that back on. All right, safety first, folks. Safety first. Yeah, that's my whip. It's fun to drive. It gets me around when I don't need to have a car. All right, here we go. And off we go, back with the blinker, and we're gonna go, here we go. So, back on topic. You gotta have microbes in the soil to break down your amendments that you're adding. And in order to have the microbes in the soil, they gotta have conditions that will keep them alive. Which goes into the principles that we talk about in our Living Soil community on school, right? We talk about air, water, food. You gotta have those in place if you're gonna have microbes. Just like any other living thing, if they don't have air, water, they're not gonna survive, they're not gonna live, and they're gonna die. So before you start adding amendments into the soil, you wanna make sure that you have microorganisms there. I know you're probably thinking, Dennis, how do I know if I have microorganisms there? Well, the first way is if you have a microscope, you can actually look at them. But that means you need to have a specific type of microscope. You got to have some training in how to actually do microscopy, right? So you can identify what's there, what's not there. And then you'll know, Dennis, I don't have a microscope. That sounds like a lot of work and something I don't want to do. How do I make sure the microbes are there? Well, if you just want to take a quick, if you want to make sure that the microbes are there and you want to add them, the best way to do it is to add fresh, local, first I'm going to tell you worm castings, if you can find them. So if you have a producer that locally produces worm castings or compost, I would go with them. Because those are usually going to have local microbes, they're going to be alive, and they're going to have the majority of them in there. The second thing is compost. If you can find a local compost, that's going to be another good place to be able to get your microbes. If I understand that we all don't have access to, somebody that, or a location that has worm castings or has compost that is created locally, you can always try to create your own, right? But that takes time. If you don't want to do that, then you got to work with what you got. So, work with what you got. If all you got is the big box stores with the compost in the bags, then you take that. If all you got is the worm castings on the shelf, then take that. We got to work within the confines that we all have, right? So sometimes those confines are it's just not available. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes maybe it's the quality. We can't get the best quality. We just got to settle for something that's just okay, and that's okay. We got to work within the confines that we have. So use what you got when you got it. But if you ask me, fresh worm castings that are local, if you can produce them, that's even better. Compost that is local, if you can produce it, that's even better. Otherwise, you got to stick with what's in the big box store. So, or find something in the local area. Sometimes I was working for a customer and they were living somewhere around Kentucky or Tennessee, and they couldn't find any good source. So what I actually did is I went out and looked for a source for them, and actually ended up finding a compost producer that was in the same state as them, and that actually sold to one of their local nurseries. So we found a local-ish source that was available at the big box store for them. Pretty cool, right? And when I say local, what I really mean is local to you, right? So if you can find something in your hometown, that's great. If you can find something in the town over, that's good too. If you can find something on a bigger scale in your bioregion, right, then that's great too. If you don't know what a bioregion is, it's just a general area on a map that will tell you, let's open this up, what region you're kind of in. And that's how it's kind of broken down. So you want to check your bioregion. If you can stay within your bioregion, that's good too. So that's kind of what we're shooting for when we're talking about trying to find microbes. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking bugs in a jug. Yeah. They have their pros and cons. Like I said, some of them are really kind of specialized, right? And they do a specific job with a specific plant. So just make sure that you understand what that microbe is, what it does, how it works with that specific plant or multiple plants, right? Before you go grabbing it. And remember, if you're buying bugs in a jug, it's usually you get one microbe, usually, depending on, well, I guess there's companies out there that sell multiple bugs in a jug. But if that's all you have access to, absolutely use it. But I always try to find something that's local or local to me, local-ish, as opposed to something that comes from the bigger box stores that was shipped in from California or Washington or Florida, especially if I live across the country. If it's not my bioregion, I really try not to use it. So find something that is local-ish to you. What am I doing? Yeah, I'm watering my compost. I keep my stuff nice and wet so we keep the microbes alive that we were just talking about. Because if it dries out, guess what? There's no microbes. So, got to keep everything nice and moist. Keep things alive. A little bit of water. All right. We talked about diversity. We talked about bioregions, microorganisms, and keeping those guys alive. And source of worm castings. Oh, I guess we could talk about one more thing. So, I do not sift my worm castings. And a lot of the time you're going to get material from the bigger box stores or whatever, and all that stuff is going to look very fine and very polished, right? And that's not really... Does it work? Yes, it does. To me, it's not really ideal. Like, I want the whole thing. Give me the whole shebang. Don't strip anything out. Don't leave anything out. I want all of it. Right? And I understand different manufacturers or different producers are different. But I do not sift my stuff. I give you everything whole. So if there's worms in it and the cocoons, guess what? You're getting worms and cocoons and castings and little bits of compost in there. And I do that because of the biology. When we start sifting things, all right, that's good. What I'm doing now is I'm gonna water my wedges. I think I've showed you this, guys, in another video, but when you sift different materials out, you end up hurting some of the microbiology that's in it, right? It's unintentional, I know, and sometimes we have to sift it just because, right? But we hurt the microorganisms. When it rolls around in a trommel or on a sifter, those guys get hit and they break apart. Specifically, the testate amoebas, the testates will actually break, or any amoeba if it has a test around it, right? Those will usually break if they get shooken up too much. Also, one of the important microorganisms are your fungi, right? Those guys, those networks and those hyphae or the mycelium will actually break up. And we've worked so hard to build that. We worked so hard in our compost piles and our worm compost to build up the mycelium or the fungi in it, because it's so important. It's a crucial part of, the fungal to bacterial ratio when we talk about nutrient cycling that happens in the soil. And if we sift it or we roll it around in a trommel or our little, what is it called? Shaker tables, those networks get broken up. And that's not good if we're trying to grow the best plants or provide the best soil amendment possible, right? So I don't sift my material out. The majority of producers will, and I definitely understand, right? Like, they got to hold on to their worms because some are produced in containers and they got to separate the worms from everybody else. So, all the other worm casting material, because worms are expensive and you just don't want to get rid of those guys, right? Everybody's production system is different. I'm not hating on nobody. I definitely understand people are producing things in different ways, so they have different SOPs or operating procedures that they have to kind of follow to make sure that it works for them. Hopefully we get our poop houses so that I can get rid of these nets or these shade cloths over top of our wedges, so I don't have to keep bending down and doing all of this, because this is not the funnest job right now when you have to bend over. There's definitely worse jobs, trust me, there definitely are. I just prefer just to stand up to deal with the water, but it is what it is. We'll get those poop houses hopefully soon and get them installed. So I'm gonna adjust this all the time. All right. Sifting. Yeah, I don't do it. So I pre-sift my material, or I don't sift the material out. What you see is what you get, and you'll see that in the other piles. These 4 wedges that we're watering right now are, what do you call it? Younger? Yeah. They were created in December of last year. So we're going to have to wait a few more months before we are ready to harvest these guys. And it takes about 6 months, right? From the beginning to the end. So we're 3-ish months in. We got another 3-ish months to go. Yes, it takes a long time to make worm castings. It's the process. Mother Nature works at her own pace. She don't do things fast unless you take the time every now and then. So that's just how it is in the worm world. But yeah, so when you get the material from me, you might have bigger chunks in it, smaller chunks, but that's fine. Because the biology is going to stay intact. And that's really what we're after when we're buying worm castings. If anybody has ever told you that worm castings are good because of the nutrients in it, I'd beg to differ. Because usually worm castings, when you look at the nutrient values in them, they're extremely low. They're usually 0.000 or 0.5 or 111 or something like that. And then when we look at compost is usually higher in the 5s, 3s, and 7s. And if you're not familiar with those numbers on the bags are, it's NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. I always say those backwards. So when you look at worm castings, not a lot are in those. So you're not really getting a lot of nutrients. And what you're getting in the worm castings is the biology. That's what you're buying when you buy worm castings. Biology. So these are one of the wedges that we started harvesting, right? And you can see like some of this stuff is broken down more, right? So if you look down here, this stuff is broken down. It looks like dirt. And we got a little layer here, and some of this other stuff is not so broken down, but that's okay.
because the biology is still there in that material. You get all of it with me. I'm not going to separate any of that stuff out. So, I don't think we have any mushrooms growing here today. Not today. I know over the past couple of weeks I've been posting pictures and we had a bunch of mushrooms over there and stuff, but it doesn't look like we have it today. How often do we water these wedges? About 2-ish days, two times a day right now. In the summertime, we'll probably get up to 3. When temp starts getting back into the 90s, 100s or whatever. Yeah, fun times. We'll start watering these guys probably 3 times a day again. Yep. And I know you guys are thinking, goodness, you're not even open 3 times a day. I know, I'm not. But it's the life of a worm farmer. I gotta come to the property and make sure this stuff gets taken care of. But there's other things that I do during the week that keep me busy, like making videos and editing videos, making posts, getting compost, feeding the worms, and the nursery. I guess that's one thing is I have the wedges here, but my nursery is still at home because I don't have a place to be able to set up the nursery because it's temperature controlled, climate controlled, all that stuff. Eventually we'll get there. We're just not there yet right now. So I know I saw a piece, something green over here. I don't know where it was at. I was gonna pull it out, but it disappeared on me. That's what it is. So that's it for today. I'm gonna keep watering these wedges. I got 2 more left down there. We'll get those done, and then we'll head back home, and we'll call it a day for today. Do me a favor, if you guys like this type of content, like, share, so that YouTube can send this stuff out to other people that might like it too. And if you are interested in soil biology, worms, and living soil and how all that works, you can always join my living soil community. You can head over to LasVegasWormFarm.com, look for the school community, and jump on there. And it's free. It's free over there, and you guys can learn all about this stuff that I'm talking about here. I know sometimes it can be a bit, well, that's a bit concerning, isn't it? Looks like we got a bunny rabbit a baby bunny that somebody killed. Huh. That's not good. Well, he wasn't here yesterday. Must have happened today. We do have some cats on this property. I wonder if it was the cats. Could have been, maybe. But, alright, well, I guess we're going to have to get rid of that little guy. Poor little fella. Hopefully he wasn't, I don't think he was eating the worms, but poor guy. We'll have to get rid of him. Okay. Back to the wedges. Oh. Yeah, if you want to know more about, living soil and how all that biology stuff works, you can join the Living Soil community on school, or head over to LasVegasWormFarm.com and join the community there. It's all free. We got over 1,300 growers, I guess you could say, from all over the world in that community. We all talk about the same thing: worms, compost, life, organic matter, growing things, all the things that we talk about and that we do here. Oops. So, and I guess one other thing is, if you are in the local area or you would like to work with me, one-on-one, we do offer consultations and biological testing if that's something that you're into. You can always get that information at LasVegasWormFarm.com. So, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you like this type of stuff. Hopefully you can see. This is, again, I haven't used my chest piece a lot. I just used it a few times, so hopefully this works out. Alrighty. Bye guys. We'll see you on the next one.